Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswate Devi Gaudavani Prasharine Nirvasesha Shunyavadi Paschachadesha Tarini. Hare Krishna. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksho Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Anvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyayevyacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Hare Krishna. So welcome everybody. Thank you for your association. The most auspicious place in the universe. Prabhupada's, well, this was a bank at one point of time, but it's now part of Prabhupada's quarters. Everything here is Prabhupada's quarters, even the bank. It's all there for, meant to be there, for pleasing the pure devotee of the Lord. We're going to have to adjust the microphone. I think it's kind of, what should we try to adjust it? Can't see anything. Oh, that's better. So I think tonight we're reading from the 18th chapter, is that right? Not the 19th chapter. 1918, is it? Huh? Not the 19th chapter. You have to go on to the Bhagavatam if you want that. 19, huh? We're reading from the 18th chapter, text number 19, the perfection of renunciation. We find in this chapter that many of the points which were developed in previous chapters are, again, you could say summarized. They are, mentioned here in the 18th chapter. in a kind of a very precise way. And this is one of them. Here we're hearing in this section about the three modes of nature, different kinds of knowledge, and so on, all of which have been discussed and described throughout the Bhagavad Gita, but here in a kind of summarized form. Krishna is now recapturing these points. So I guess you have the books, and we will repeat. I don't know, is that the idea? Please repeat. Jnanam karma cha karta cha tvida eva gunabedataha prochate guna sankhyane yatavat shrinu tani api jnanam karma cha karta cha tridaiva gunabedataha prochate guna sankhyane yatavashrinu tanyapi jnanam knowledge, karma, work, cha, also, karta, worker, cha, also, trida, of three kinds, eva, certainly, gunabedataha, in terms of different modes of material nature. Prochate are said, gunasankhyaane, in terms of different modes. Yatavat, as they are. Shrinu, hear. Tani, all of them. Api, also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. According to the three different modes of material nature, there are three kinds of knowledge: action and performer of action. Now hear of them from me. Purport. In the 14th chapter, the three divisions of the modes of material nature were elaborately described. In that chapter, it was said that the mode of goodness is illuminating, the mode of passion materialistic, and the mode of ignorance conducive to laziness and indolence. All the modes of material nature are binding. They are not sources of liberation. Even in the mode of goodness, one is conditioned. In the 17th chapter, the different types of worship by different types of men in different modes of material nature were described. In this verse, the Lord says that He wishes to speak about the different types of knowledge, workers, and work itself according to the three material modes. That's the purport, Srila Prabhupada's purport. This verse is introducing the subject matter of these three topics: knowledge, action, and performer. And we also hear about different sacrifices, charity, austerities, and so many other topics in the modes of nature. In the 17th chapter, Prabhupada mentions just one aspect here in terms of the different worship of different types of men. But in the 17th chapter, Krishna also describes, different sacrifices, the different modes they're in, different foodstuffs which people may be attracted to, different types of work, different types of everything, charity and so on, in different modes of nature. In the 14th chapter, as Prabhupada is mentioning here, more of a description of the effects of being in particular modes of nature are described, or being influenced by modes. And we all know, probably, that the modes of nature are working under Krishna's direction. And Krishna's reciprocating with the living entity, placing us under various modes according to our deserve and desire. And we're more or less controlled by the modes. I'll just read a little bit from the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna, first of all, he describes how, this knowledge of the three modes of nature, it sounds material, but it's Krishna's divine energy. We see in the 7th chapter, Krishna describes it. It says, Daivihesha gunamaya mamamaya dharachaya, as his divine energy. It's not some competitor to Krishna. It's divine. It just acts upon us in a way that we forget our divinity, but it's nonetheless the divine energy of the Lord. Like in a kingdom, everything is, in one sense, is under the king's jurisdiction. Whatever it may be, even the prison house is part of the kingdom. So this material world is also Krishna's kingdom. But in this material world, we're not going to get into detail, but basically speaking, the living entity is being driven and influenced by the three modes of material nature. Goodness, passion, and ignorance, to behave in such and such a way. It's not the constitutional soul that's behaving in such and such a way, although the root is no doubt the actual attitude of the constitutional living entity. What we see in front of us is a conditioned effect, a reflection of pure consciousness manifested through this material body and senses, etc. According to the modes of nature. So different people respond according to the mode of nature, and we do also, to different situations. Some people, for instance, Prabhupada's mentioning here the effects of the mode of goodness. What are the effects of the mode of goodness? If the mode of goodness is influencing a person, what are the effects? Pardon? Illuminating, that's what Prabhupada just mentioned. What does that mean, illuminating? What does that mean? He's a very expert electrician? What does it mean?
Knowledge?
Yeah, it could be, yes, definitely knowledge. Even mundane knowledge. There's an influence of the mode of goodness, and Prabhupada mentions that in the 14th chapter, that even scientists, philosophers, although there is also passion and ignorance, of course there is, but it's an influence of goodness, that they have the ability to analyze or to assimilate knowledge of the material energy. It may not be complete, but something is there. Poets, and so on. There may be some influence there. And of course, in higher planets, there's more influence of the mode of goodness. What else is an influence of the mode of goodness? Pardon? Happiness, yeah. And that's one of the challenges of the mode of goodness. Because there's a happiness. In every mode of nature, the living entity thinks themselves happy. Of course, we also feel miserable sometimes, but there's a degree of happiness no matter what condition. Prabhupada even said, even in hell, the living entity thinks this isn't so bad, because they don't know anything else. Like the animals. We were reading this morning, Srila Prabhupada was saying, the animal doesn't know it's suffering. It doesn't know. It's in ignorance. It doesn't know. One in the mode of goodness knows that may be suffering, living in a particular situation. To them, it's suffering. But there's a happiness, predominant happiness in the mode of goodness. Generally, there's a decrease in misery when one's situated in the mode of goodness, usually. And there's the reactions, of course, there's sinful reactions are more or less diminished, as long as one acts in the mode of goodness. And there's a happiness, but the problem is there. What's the problem?
It's temporary.
Pardon?
Is it temporary?
Well, it's temporary, yeah. It's temporary. That's for sure. Binding. That's what the word Krishna uses. Bind. It binds us. You become attached to it. People become attached to their position in this world, comfortable position, or maybe an influential position. You become attached to it. It's something you want, and you want to increase it. Even the mode of goodness is binding. All the three modes bind the living entity. The reaction to that bondage may vary, obviously, according to how one acts. It's an ongoing cycle. I mean, it's like the chain of karma and action and reaction and the influence of the modes of nature. It's a cycle. Sometimes it just goes on and on and on. Sometimes we're influenced by goodness, sometimes passion, sometimes by ignorance. But everyone is under the control of the three modes of nature. So the 14th chapter is very special because in the very beginning, Krishna says, I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all sages have attained supreme perfection. By becoming fixed in knowledge. What is that knowledge? Knowledge is what are the three modes of nature, how they act, how they bind, and how they liberate. They liberate also. If we know how to work or act or perform sacrifice, or what is knowledge, everything within the modes, if we know it, and if we know what's behind the three modes. Generally speaking, people just look at it, because the scientist doesn't even consider three modes, but they just look at the phenomena. They don't consider there's anything numinal behind it, anything substantial behind it. They're missing the essential purpose of their study. So the same thing with the three modes of nature. To know, oh, if I act in the mode of goodness, which a lot of people do, I'll be elevated. I'll get a nice material result. I'll get free of my reactions. People will like me. I'll be comfortable. It's, materially speaking, it's maybe attractive. But that's not the point. That will not release us from the very basic, the basic issues of being in the material world. Because that won't last either. It doesn't last. As you say, it's temporary. One has to come back again into the cycle and work round again. So how it liberates, that is taught here in the 14th chapter. How by working or understanding the three modes of nature, understanding them, how they act, how they liberate, how they bind, and but most important is to understand that what's behind them, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the source, Mayajikshena Prakriti Sute Sucharacharam. Etunana Kuntiya. That he is behind the three modes of nature. They're working under his direction. And he's transcendental. He's not like conditioned by them. They take it in turns. Whew, I've had my time, now it's your turn to look after them. That was a pretty heavy job, looking after those three modes of nature, my God. Whew, had enough of that. Now it's your turn. No, for Krishna it's not. It's not like that. He's transcendental. All by his arrangement they go on, by his expansions and his diverse energies in various ways, everything's going on. It's not like he's toiling like an ordinary person to try to achieve an objective goal. For him it's everything is very easy, and he's also controlling it. It's not just creating this situation, he's controlling it all, maybe through his various expansions, but he's controlling everything. So knowing this, this material energy is also called Brahman, because ultimately everything's Brahman. It's just covered. It's just covered. We can't see it. It's sunlight. Sunlight may be covered by the clouds, but there's still, nonetheless, it's sunlight. If there was no sun, there would be no light at all. So it's Brahman, it's spiritual. There's no life. Without Brahman, there's no life. It's the source of everything. We come from the spirit. We're coming from the spiritual dimension, you could say. We're spiritual beings. Under the influence of these three modes of nature, we identify with this material world, and we think, I am whatever we are. Right? If you're in the mode of goodness, you think, I'm a nice guy. I'm a good guy. People like me. You know, I'm doing well for myself, you know. Yeah. And you might eat nice food, healthy food. You look pretty smart. You don't, you know, your house is pretty cool. You got a nice family, and you know, you got, materially speaking, you know, you got things going your way. You're doing good. Maybe a reaction, but a lot of times people in the mode of goodness, they're like, you can see they're bright-faced, and they're often vegetarians even. Being a vegetarian doesn't mean you're on the spirit. You're spiritual, by the way. I don't know many animals. What animals are vegetarian? Can you think of some? Monkeys. Monkey. Huh?
They eat all sorts of things.
No, they don't. They're not vegetarian. I think they were traditionally vegetarians, but out of necessity, they probably aren't anymore. Cows are vegetarians, and all the animals many animals by nature are vegetarian. Although, you know, because of unnatural circumstances, sometimes they're not, but they're generally their nature isn't. And people in the mode of goodness by nature are attracted to that sort of a lifestyle, you know, more of a pious lifestyle like that. What about the mode of passion? What's symptomatic of the mode of passion? I don't think anyone here would have a clue, because none of you here have any influence of the mode of passion, I'm sure of that. I won't say if it's the other mode that we haven't mentioned yet, but do we have a third canto Bhagavatam available? I was just thinking the same. Maybe we can read something from Canto 3. This is the library, so there definitely should be one here. If someone can please give me one. Yeah, that's all right, but there's a library. Just open it. Give us the book. Third canto. No, I can't work on phones. I don't like working on those type of things. Even on I use a computer sometimes, but I don't like it when you're, referring to different verses, because you can only see the page you're on and you don't know where you are and this and that. Try to get a third canto Bhagavatam from somewhere. The third canto, chapter 29. So, mode of passion. Anyone here ever experienced anything like the mode of passion? Anybody? Nobody? One or two there. Maybe three. Come on, you're brahmachari. You shouldn't know what a mode of passion. Mode of passion, what symptoms of mode of passion?
Longings, desires.
Yeah, longings, unending desires to fulfill, right? Constantly plan making and becoming really attached, right? And then when you become really attached, what happens? Huh? You may become disturbed. Well, we're coming into the other mode there. But you may become disturbed. What are the symptoms of the mode of passion?
Anger.
What else?
Greedy.
And be very greedy, very lusty, very greedy. Never satisfied, right? Never satisfied. But the world, you need passion. You don't do much if you don't have passion, right? It's like in Ayurveda, you have a balance between the three, the three dosas, right? If they're not balanced, then you're out of balance. You're inharmonious. You've got to balance them. There's nothing wrong with any of them, but you've got to have the right balance. So the same thing with the modes of nature. There's got to be a degree of passion there. Otherwise, you're not going to do much. In fact, if there's no passion and ignorance, what is it?
Laziness.
Pardon? No passion, no ignorance. What is it? Pardon? Huh? I can't hear. Pure goodness. If there's no passion, no ignorance. But there's always passion and ignorance there in the material world. Always. Birth, the whole universe. That's why Lord Brahma is in charge of Rajagun. He's the creator. There'd be nothing existing if it wasn't for the influence of the mode of passion. And of course we're in ignorance. Passion, there may be a few other things you could think of. But what about the mode of ignorance?
Laziness.
Pardon? Well, Prabhupada just mentioned a couple of things there, didn't he? What did he say? Huh?
Laziness.
Laziness. And then nobody ever has a problem with that, I'm sure. Indolence. What's indolence? Huh? Indolence. What's indolence? Nothing much. You just don't want any change. You're not, it just don't. It's just keep it as it is. It's just like, can't be bothered, It's not quite lazy. You're doing something, but it's just like you don't want any progress or anything. It's just like laid back, What else is influence of the mode of ignorance? Huh?
Lamentation.
Lamentation. We had hankering and passion. And in ignorance there's a lot of lamentation, that's for sure. What else? Yeah, and madness. Madness is foolish identification with the body, ardently meditate, completely fixed in I am the body, right? There's no other idea of who. I remember maybe 10 years ago we had a brahmachari convention in London. And on the last day we went on Harinam Sankirtan in Piccadilly Circus, where we couldn't get in. It was Gay Pride Day. We couldn't get in. They blocked off the whole central London. It was like 500,000, 1 million of it, whatever, I don't know. But the whole central London was blocked off. We were just going around the outside on Harinam. It was a good test for the brahmacharis on their last day of the convention. And, I remember, never forget this one guy, he was screaming at me, I am my body! He was one of these persons who like to show it off also. And he was absolutely determined to convince himself and everyone, I am my body. What do you do with such things? What do you do with such persons? I don't know. But completely in the mode of ignorance. Completely in the mode of ignorance, with an influence of passion. I'm not complete. There's passion there too. But virtually no influence of goodness. So that the mode working on them, they act according to the mode working on them. There are a few other things in the mode of ignorance. Sleep. What else? So all these modes actually can be, you can say, utilized in a sense. One is in the mode of good. Even things like sleep are, can be regulated. Regulation. We can regulate these modes. And so is that got chapter 29, third canto? He's having a hard time finding out. Going page by page. You look in the front, you'll see. It tells you in the front. He's going page by page. Mode of goodness. Oh, going backwards now, mode of ignorance. He's not aware. Well done. Joy! Haribo! Transcendental. Now he's become transcendental. So for a devotee, we're all conditioned, some of us have come from probably different conditionings in the past. Some of us came from deep ignorance. Many of the early devotees were covered by deep ignorance, drug taking, intoxications, uncleanliness. Mode of goodness, cleanliness is another symptom of the mode of goodness. In the mode of passion, you quickly clean the room and you quickly make it dirty again. The mode of ignorance is always dirty and you don't like it being any other way. You get angry if somebody tries to clean it up. I used to stay in a derelict house maybe 1980. I started a centre in this little city, and I was living in a derelict house alone. Well, I was staying with one urchin. He was a kind of ex-hippie urchin, and I had to stay there for about a week with him until I had somewhere else to stay. I had nowhere else to stay. And his place was the most filthy place, second most filthy place I've ever seen. I'll tell you the most filthy in a minute. The second most filthy place I've ever seen. It was unbelievable. He never once washed his hands, never washed his plates, never washed the pots. He would cook and then just leave the pot and cook again with whatever scars are left on from the previous meal, and cook it again in the pot. Same with his plate and spoon and everything. Never wash his hands after pooping. Nothing. I had to go out in the garden to get water. There was no water in the place. And he would never do it. It was like a real test of, what can you say? Something or another. Tolerance, I don't know what it is. You kind of didn't have any choice at the time. And but the most dirty place I've ever seen, I remember I was in London one time. I went to pick somebody up who wanted to join the temple. We used to do things like that. You meet somebody on the street and you kind of convince them to join the temple. Then you go and pick them up, at the weekend. So I went to his house, and oh my God, I have never experienced it. Anything in my life. Never. Oh, talk about a pigsty. This was like, I think even the pigs would have had a hard time in there. It stunk like I've never smelt anything stink before, or after. He would just pass stool on the ground. It was like put newspapers on top of it. It was like the whole room was just like full of stinky newspapers, smeary, stinky. I couldn't go in, but he came out, and God knows. I don't know if he finally made it or not. I can't remember. But I just remember going totally in the mode of ignorance. Somehow or another, Lord Chaitanya's movement is picking people up from this dense, dark ignorance that we're in. Sometimes it's gross. Sometimes it's just kind of like normal. People are just ignorant of their identity, ignorant of what the purpose of life is, ignorant of why they're suffering, ignorant of, why they react in such and such a way. Sometimes we lament, right? You act in such a way, but people who are deep in the mode of ignorance, they don't think like that. They think that's perfectly okay to treat people the way they do. They don't know. They're so dark. It's like an animal, Dog doesn't, oh, I shouldn't have barked at that person. Oh, that was a big mistake there. I really scared him. Oh no, what am I going to do about it? I better go back and lick him. They don't think like that, Neither do people in the mode of ignorance. They don't care a damn. They're happy to see you suffer. People in the mode of passion also, in a sense, because, they're competing. And if they can get one up on you, they're glad about it, But sometimes they may feel a little bit of a tinge of that. People in the mode of goodness, they can't handle that. They really feel bad if somehow or other, the mode of passion and ignorance get the better of them and they mistreat somebody. They don't like to see people suffer, people in the mode of goodness. People in the mode of passion like to see people suffer who are not on their side. They don't like to see people in their team suffer, but they like to see people on the other team suffer, or the other country, or whatever it is, the other religion, whatever it is. People in the mode of ignorance don't care less. They don't have much of a concept of it anyway. It's all bleh. Anyway, so those are some interesting things. And then we see at the end of this chapter, you go on, material nature, of course, consists of three modes. We've already heard that. And when the living entity comes in contact with this material energy, we become conditioned. Actually, the spirit soul is pure. We have nothing to do with the three modes of nature. Nothing. Prabhupada's example is like a thorn. I'm sure we've all had in Vrindavan a thorn stuck in our foot or somewhere at some point of time. Even you're wearing shoes, the thorns in Vrindavan can go through your shoes quite easily. They're very special thorns in Vrindavan. You can't stop them. If it's your turn, they get in there. But anyway, that doesn't. It's quite easy to remove. But probably is an example that you can remove a thorn. Sometimes it gets in and cracks off. It's very difficult. You take another thorn and you remove it with that thorn. Huh? So with the same three modes of material nature, if we know how to work within the three modes of nature, we have that knowledge, we can actually gain some a little bit of liberation, freedom from their control, their effects, instead of being controlled by them. People think this is a giving up one's freedom. You Hare Krishnas, you have no freedom. Right? No freedom. You can't think for yourself. People say sometimes, right? You're just robots. Well, the other day it came up. I thought, my God, they're thinking I'm a robot. I don't know what I was doing. I was going on the internet computer and it said, "Are you a robot?" I thought, what's this? Have you ever seen that? Does it say it on the computer sometimes? I couldn't understand. It said, "Are you a robot?" Weird thing to ask. I don't know what it's coming to. I think Stephen Hawking's, one of his predictions is coming true. One of his predictions was, very soon technology is advancing at such a pace we will not need human beings much longer. That's one of the things he said. We will not need, whoever we are, will not need you anymore. Basically that's what he said. Maybe he is a robot. I don't know. Whatever. But we're not robots. We are in conscious living beings, but we're under the conditioned influence of the three modes, just like a drunkard. There's another influence, an intoxication. Drunkard persons, mode of ignorance. So that what do they can't see what is to be done, what's not to be done. They can't clearly understand situations. Everyone in the material world is influenced by that. Even those in goodness are influenced by that. Even though they've got a little bit of understanding of the material aspect of goodness, they have no understanding in general. They may have some, but they don't have real understanding of transcendence, which is the real purpose of this 14th chapter. It's not just to learn how to live better in the three modes, how to avoid sufferings, how to increase our pleasure within the prison house. It's to get out of it. So if you go to verse 27 probably, the final verses in this chapter, I'll just read one or two. Well, I think we already mentioned maybe one. No, perhaps we didn't. Let's see. 26. Yeah. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sugunan samatityaitan brahmabhuya yokalpate. Haribo! And what does that verse mean? Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Haribo, Hare Krishna. What does that verse mean? Without looking at the book, does anybody know? Or the MOBA? Yes, Prabhu. Was that your hand that went up?
I was thinking that it was outside.
Oh, you want to go outside? You have my permission? No problem. Huh? Jai. So what does it mean? Mamchiyo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunun satichaitan brahmabhuya kalpate. What does it mean? Yes, Mother. Yes. This is the third verse goes. One who engages in full devotional service, complete. That means fully. Doesn't mean a little dabbling in devotional service. Fully. Unfailing in every circumstance. Doesn't mean 6 days a week, 7th day of rest, or something like that. Have a binge on the 7th day. Enjoy yourself. Sleep all day long. Whatever you like to do. No. Unfailing in every circumstance. What happens then? At once transcends the three modes of nature, transcends them. In the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, one of the earlier verses in the 2nd chapter, what does Krishna say to Arjuna? Trigunya Nitya. What did he say? The three. Huh? The Vedas deal mainly with the three modes of nature. And then? The rise above them, Arjuna. Be transcendental. So, the Vedas give us that direction, how we can work within the three modes. But ultimately, the purpose is not that. Most people are hung up with that. They're performing worship for that reason, to get elevated, maybe to get liberated, but not to the complete liberated stage. That's why we have Bhagavatam, of course, is to transcend the three modes. That doesn't mean we give up. We learn to work with the three modes without being controlled or affected by them. The Vedas it is there, but it's not so clear. It's more to elevate us within the material world. Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita also teaches how to utilize the three, or live within the three modes in a way that we can transcend their effects. So we're no longer controlled by them. So let's have a little look at that. That's interesting. We're now going to go to the third. I think we are. Can you pass that book, please? I find a fascinating part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the third canto, chapter 29. Who knows who's speaking in that section? Who?
Lord Kapila Dev.
Lord Kapila. And who is speaking to? Pardon? Devahuti. Very good. His mother. Amazing, huh? Most mothers will not take instructions from their sons. Right? But in spiritual life, whoever's got the knowledge, if they've actually got it, and the humility of Mother Devahuti is the secret. It's like Arjuna, Prabhupada says, because we have to hear Bhagavad Gita with the attitude of Arjuna, not with our conditional, pride. That's another aspect of the mode of goodness and passion also. One's proud of one's, whatever it is, isn't it? You may be a learned scholar or a Nobel Prize winner, but you can easily get proud of it, So let's see what he's got to say. Lord Kapila Dev, the personality of Godhead, replied. His mother was asking various questions, nice questions, how we can get free from the influence of the material energy and so on. Oh, noble lady, there are multifarious paths of devotional service in terms of the different qualities of the executor. We sometimes think it's all one. It's not. There are multifarious paths of devotional service. So then, interesting verses. Devotional service executed, think carefully. Maybe some of this applies to us. Devotional service executed by a person who is envious, proud, violent, and angry, and who is a separatist, is considered to be in the mode of darkness. It's one of the 81 varieties of mixed devotional service. Srila Prabhupada describes the 81 types of mixed devotional service. There's the three modes of nature, first of all. This is one, the mode of ignorance. And then there are 9 items, 9 limbs of devotional service. Interesting. In sadhana bhakti, 9 limbs. But they may also be in the modes of nature. So you multiply it by 3 again, you get 81. 81 varieties of mixed devotional service. Even the devotional service in the mode of goodness is still not complete. Even if there's no passion or ignorance in a sense, there will be some. So that's in the mode of ignorance. And it mentions here proud. Most people are a little proud, aren't we? Sometimes, huh? Ever been envious? Ever been angry for, maybe not for a transcendental reason? Maybe because someone touched their false ego, right? You ever had that? Someone touches our pride, and we become angry sometimes. And sometimes we want to take revenge, right? I'm going to get my own back on them. Is it? Sometimes you've had that? At least we've seen it. Angry. And who's a separatist? What does that mean, a separatist?
My way or the highway.
Could be my way or the highway. What else? Pardon?
Friend and enemy.
Huh?
Enemy and friend.
Enemy of what?
Enemy and friend.
With duality, yes, separatist, but... Pardon? Separatist? Sorry? You have to speak loud because the sound of the fan and everything else going on blurs the sound between you and me. We're not in the forest of Naimisharanya. Separatist? Any separatists here? Is a political party, maybe? The Separatist Party. What is it? Bottom line is we have separate desires from those of Krishna. That's the meaning. Separate intentions, separate desires, whatever form it comes out in. We're seeing ourselves separate from Krishna. We're seeing the energy of Krishna separate from Krishna. And this is also the nature of one in the mode of ignorance, or devotional service in the mode of ignorance. We don't see it in relationship with Krishna, we see it in relationship with ourselves. So that's interesting. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur advises, of course that may be us, if we look at it, it might be me, probably is me. It says, he describes that we should avoid such association, show respect, but not intimately associate. But of course, persons who are of a similar mode or a similar influence tend to associate with persons who have that same conditioning in their devotional activities. You hang around with people who like to gossip, right? You hang around with people who like to criticize. You're looking for somebody who agrees with your criticisms, isn't it? Common, it's common. Or angle, whatever degree, whatever blend of devotional service we have is natural. We're going to look for people who have a similar blend. Birds of a feather flock together. In one sense it's called svajati. But that's not enough. But it's natural we're going to do that. And but now, okay, because of time limitations, we'll go on to the second one. The worship of the deities in the temple by a separatist. So the mode, this is also the second mode, mixed devotional service. Also separatist nature will be there. By a separatist, one who sees themselves in the center and not Krishna, with a motive for material enjoyment, fame and opulence, is devotion in the mode of passion. Perhaps you've experienced that, I don't know. Recognition, huh? Sometimes we like to be recognized and we get upset if we're not recognized. Sometimes we become angry. Sometimes we leave. Right? We fall into it. It becomes a little bit devotional service in the mode of ignorance, then it becomes the mode of ignorance. Opulence. Sometimes we want to get something out of it. A separatist is always one who wants to get something out of his service. Have you ever heard that? I know that many times. People say, wow, I've served, I've been in this movement 20 years, what have I got out of it? What have I got out of it? We're not here to get something out of it. We're here to get out of it. We forget the point of why we're here. You know, we think we should get something for our service. That is not devotional service. That's at best it's like some kind of very mixed devotional service, if you want to call it that. It's a business arrangement. You know, I should get a position, I should get name and fame, I should get a nice house, I should get a car, a wife, and money, and whatever it is. Promotion. Maybe not those specific things, but something. We want something, or even to get relieved. We'll come to that. That's the third one. But those in the mode of passion, they want something out of it. They worship the deities, but they want something. I remember I was in one temple one time in Navadvip, and the devotees made an appeal for some donations. The donations came forward to there was one old pujari there, and there was a young pujari in the background. And when they saw the money coming back, the young pujari ran forward to get the money. The old Pujari tried to grab it. The young Pujari tried to grab it. They started fighting right in front of the deities to get the money. A little bit in the mode of passion. Maybe a bit of ignorance there too. Definitely not goodness. That's the deity is not for you, my friend.
Not ISKCON temple.
Huh? No, not in ISKCON temple. I don't know. Maybe that happens in ISKCON temple. I don't know. But that wasn't an ISKCON temple. And you see these things. They're out for, followers. What's that Lord Chaitanya said, isn't it? My dear Lord, give me followers, give me wealth, give me women, isn't it? Is that what he said in the Sikshastakam? Huh? Is that what he said? My Lord, I want followers, I want wealth, I want beautiful women. I'll chant your holy name if you give me those things. Is that what Lord Chaitanya said? If you want those things, you can't chant the holy name. We're chanting something like, whatever, some kind of reflection or something. But it's not the real name. We've got to come a little bit more advanced if we really want Krishna consciousness. Otherwise you get what you deserve, You're going to get some mixed, watered down material kind of reflective effect. You're not going to get the real thing. It's relative. You're just going to get a relative result. And you're going to have relatives too. You're going to have all kinds of material entanglements, objects of the senses, identifying with, seeing the world as belonging to us. Even though we're chanting Hare Krishna, and I'm a brahmachari, this is my watch. It's mine. Those are my copals. Ladies don't know what that is, excuse me. This is my room. You can't stay here. That's my gulab. He stole my, I've seen some young devotees, little ones. He stole my gulab. It's kind of all right for a kid, but not for an adult, It's supposed to be a little bit more mature. And see Krishna's hand working. So the mode of passion tends to be like that. Of course, Mayavadis are completely separate, but they're not engaged. They have some kind of I don't know what you call it, kind of perform activities which they may call devotion, but it's not at all devotional service. Then we come to the third one. When a devotee worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers the results of his activities in order to free himself from the inebrieties of fruitive activities, his devotion is in the mode of goodness. So he's trying to free himself. He knows that if he does his service without these other factors, it's a little like, what's it in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, what's that verse? Yat karoshi dashnashya jahasi dadasya. That, whatever you do as an offering unto me, whatever work and offerings, this, that, you do it for me. It's not pure devotional service. One may still be attached to the work, one may still be a little attached to becoming, freed from suffering and things like that. Those tendencies are there in the mode of goodness. And the Varnashram system specifically is there to help people in different modes connect with devotional service in such a way that they can gradually become elevated. The modes of those in the mode of ignorance, they may work as shuddhas, but there'll be an element of devotional service there which will gradually help them to become elevated or attracted towards Krishna consciousness or towards a more mode of goodness if they're not spiritually inclined. And those in the Vaishyas and so on and so forth, to help elevate people if they follow the various rules, regulations, process of that particular order of life or mode of nature which is more influential there. This is all directed from a different platform. If it's directed by somebody who's in the modes of nature, nobody's going to get anywhere. The same in our temples, if they're managed by persons who are influenced by the mode of passion, that's what you're going to get. Even the mode of mundane goodness, you're going to get mundane good results. You're not going to get transcendental. Look, you can if you're sincere, but by that association alone it won't work. It's by association. So the Vedic system is that the association is not just one of the modes of nature and rising to goodness, it's to transcend the modes of nature. The Vedic system was devised for that. Of course, if one is actually working according to the Vedic system, one will make advancement, but to transcend it is not enough. One has to have the association with the transcendentalist. to rise above the modes. One has to follow their directions. So we have our Svadharma, both material. There's two types of work, constitutionally in the material world according to the modes of nature. We have to learn to work. And then there's transcendental Svadharma. So the pure devotees, they engage us according to our conditioning also within the modes of nature, but in such a way that we will gradually rise. That's why in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna was on Arjuna's case like anything. Right? He was getting on his case, telling him, you have to work. Have you ever heard that? Sometimes the temple presence. You got to do service or get out. Well, Krishna was telling Arjuna the same thing. Fight or get out of here. You got to do it. It's your nature. You got to work. Why? Why? Yes, Prabhu.
To engage the senses in the devotional service.
Yeah, from one's own personal, practical point of view, you could say. But Arjuna, Krishna said, even those who are in knowledge still work. Why? Why? Pardon?
Set an example.
Yeah, yad yadacharati shreshtas tatariveta. They set an example, right? Because common men don't know the goal of life. They're in ignorance. They have no idea. Their attachment to work, their attachment to this, that, and the other. So the pure devotees, just like Prithu Maharaj. If you read this pastimes of Prithu Maharaj, King Priyavrata, Ambarish, all these great personalities, they're transcendental. But still they work. They perform activities just like everyone else almost. Why? To show everyone else how to do it in a way that they'll become advanced, or they can advance. Prithu Maharaj was doing karma kandya yagyas here, there and there, everywhere. Show people who are really in that mode of nature how they can do it properly so they can advance. Like a father shows a child how to do simple things. It's not that the father needs to do it, but for the child learns. The teacher, 2 + 2 = 4. What a stupid teacher. Is that all he knows? 2 and 2 = 4? No, because the children are at that level, he's just 2 and 2 = 4. And he's also going through it, 2 + 2, move this here, move that there. To show by example is by example. In the material world and in the spiritual world is example, which, or let's say association, which can help us to advance materially and spiritually by proper association, proper guidance. So we can rise to, in the material world, up to the modes of nature, if you want to go that path, or to the transcendental path, if we really have the good fortune to associate with the pure devotee of the Lord, who engages us in such a way that we can actually remember Krishna, understand these truths of the modes of nature, how they act, how they liberate, how they bind, and what is knowledge, who is the knower, what is the object of knowledge, etc. They engage in such a way that this becomes not just theory, as Krishna says in the 4th chapter, those who dedicate themselves to this knowledge of Krishna's transcendental position and acting within his plan, those persons who dedicate themselves to that realize that knowledge in due course of time. It's a realization. A realization. It's not just a theoretical imposition, a show. It's a realization which comes to the devotee when they're fully engaged, mamchayo vyabhicharina, they come to that spiritual platform. And on that spiritual platform, real devotion. It's when we come to the Brahman platform. One time one devotee asked Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, what does it actually feel like when you realize you're not this body, you're a spirit soul? Prabhupada said, you haven't realized it? Then you've made no spiritual advancement. You've made some advancement. Real advancement is when you're on the spiritual platform. We're advancing towards it, hopefully. But when we're on that platform, that's a little different. Those who are in the mode of goodness are beginning to see maybe the equality amongst all living entities, but it's based on the fact, as long as we have this discrimination of thinking, oh, I love Krishna, but I don't like those people over there. This is like in the mode of passion. The mode of goodness, one doesn't think like that, because one sees that in every body, the super soul is there. They're being guided by the Supreme Lord. And if we discriminate against them, that means we're in one sense, we're discriminating against Krishna. We try to influence them in such a way that they'll connect with Krishna. But the fact that they're in that particular mode, they're being guided by Krishna. Krishna's in their hearts. Don't forget that he's in the heart of every living entity. So this is the knowledge. One who is transcendental knows that. So he has no friends and enemies. He sees everyone as Krishna's part and parcel. Mamcha yoga vicharana bhakti yoga say. He sees everyone as Krishna's part and parcel. He doesn't see, he sees beyond the conditional nature of the living entity. But for preaching, he works within this world, and it appears that he's working in a certain way, maybe in the mode of passion sometimes. But he's actually on the transcendental platform. He's helping us to rise to the transcendental platform by engaging us in such and such a way. So how we come there? So the next verse, the manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted. Attracted to what? One's mind is attracted to what? Yes, very good. To the name and activities of the Supreme Personality of God. When our mind becomes attracted to that, to hearing about Krishna. We were mentioning to Abhay, and we mentioned it last night, a beautiful verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Lord Chaitanya talking to Sanatana Goswami, and he's saying that how the sound of the Krishna's flute so attracts the minds of the gopas. It's just like a bird entering into their heart and makes a nest in their heart, a nest of the sound of the flute in their heart. And so in this way, they have no attraction for anything else whatsoever. If they see anything in this material world, they simply relate it to Krishna. Anybody, any situation, anything that happens in their life, they relate it to Krishna. It's not like Krishna's over there. They see everything in relationship with Krishna. Everything. So the pure devotee, maybe you could say, can see even much further. But it's like that. They have no attraction for anything of this world or anywhere except for Krishna. Not even for the forms of Krishna. Maybe not even for another relationship with Krishna. But especially this is the mood of the gopis. They have absolutely zero attraction for anything else. Just that flute, the sound of Krishna's flute and everything else that goes along with it. So what does that mean to us? Well, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that sound, that transcendental sound, that captivating sound of Krishna's flute appears in this world as the Maha Mantra. That is none different than the sound of Krishna's flute. And Prabhupada said, if we become attracted to that sound, that transcendental sound, all other attractions would disappear. And of course, the more we become attracted, the more the other desires dissipate. So this is a special transcendental mercy of Srila Prabhupada that is giving us this opportunity, and all the great devotees, giving us this opportunity, although we have maybe little qualification, if any. Only qualification is somehow or another we've got the good fortune of meeting a pure devotee. Somehow or another we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're trying to do some service to Srila Prabhupada, and we're trying to spread this chanting of Hare Krishna, this Sankirtan movement all over the world in its different forms, to help every living entity, to help us to become purified of our conditional nature, of our false identification, of all the attachments we have in this material world, of our separatist nature. So this knowledge of these modes of nature and how they work, how they bind us and how they liberate us, etc., and how we can transcend these modes of nature, is given in the 14th chapter, here in the 18th chapter, in the 17th chapter, and in different places in the Gita and beyond. So we'll finish there. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions? Prabhu? Mike. There's a mic there.
In the beginning you were speaking about the king is having the kingdom, in the kingdom there is a prison house. So similarly Krishna also is having the material world is a prison house of the Krishna. So
prison house of Krishna.
Yeah. We are in prison house.
We are?
Oh.
You want to be in Krishna's prison?
Yeah. So the difference between the kingdom prison and the Krishna's prison.
Yeah, reflection. The difference is, I don't know if you've ever seen it, there's one Christian group, they distribute these magazines, and they show pictures of heaven. And there you are with your pet dog, with your grandfather, your kid, your uncle, your aunt, your brother, your sister, your wife, your girlfriend, whatever you've got. There you are in heaven. There's one thing missing. You know what it is? God. There's no God there. It's funny, huh? In the material prison house, well, of course he's here also, but people don't see him. He's everywhere. So devotional service is to see him. This is, in one sense, we call it a prison house, but it's a prison house by our own making. By our own making. Prabhupada writes in the second canto of Bhagavatam, the material would only exist because of the desire of the living entity. Otherwise, there's no need to exist. Krishna arranges this covering potency, so we forget, as we just heard. When the living entity comes in contact with the three modes of nature, they become conditioned. That means we start to identify with the modes of nature, and we forget our spiritual constitutional nature. And the love, which is the constitution of the soul, becomes perverted and diverse, and becomes deflected towards objects of this material world. It's a reflection of the spiritual world. Everything you see in this world has its origin in the spiritual world. The prison in the spiritual world is a prison of love. You don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to go anywhere else. But it's not like, like you're in a cage and you can't get out, It's unlimited. It has no limits. Oh, you come to the end, that's it, stop, no entry. Danger zone, you can't go beyond. The spiritual world is unlimited. There's no limit. And the living entities there are free. They have no, free means there's no reaction. You're free because love, pure love for Krishna. You act naturally, totally spontaneously. Everything is just pleasing to Krishna. There's no limits, like in this material, where is this the right thing to do? Hold on a minute, I'll just look it up. Hold on, I'm just going to look up the answer to your question. It's not like that. It's automatic. You get a tiny reflection in the material world. One who's madly in love with someone, they're not really thinking of what other people think, are they? Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. They just act in an uncontrollable way. The mother for her child, the lover for her beloved. They're like delirious almost, They don't think of anything else. And so you get a little bit of that influence in let's say, you can learn everything in the material world. Experience in this material, you see. Bhagavatam, many places you see this is learning lessons from the material energy around us, Because there's a spiritual origin. That lust has its origin in unending love, unalloyed love. We have to come to that platform. Then you're free from the effects of birth, death, disease, and old age, karmas, everything else, cycle of birth and death in this material world, free from anxiety, free from frustration, free from lamentation. All these things don't exist. They exist on a transcendental level, but there it's all enhancing one's love of Krishna. In this world, it takes us away from him. You stay in this world. It's our choice. Call it a prison, call it what you like, but it's a place where errant souls let's say, accommodated. The Lord accommodates. It's our choice. You stay in this prison. If you want to call it a prison, if you want to, the spiritual world, if you want to call it that, it's a prison of love. You want to be in that. That's your constitution. Fulfillment. When you have a loving, if your mother has even the calf, if you go over there now, there's 5 or 6 new calves over there in the Gaushal. For the mother, this is like, it's like paradise, being with her calf. It's for the calf, with the mother, it's that they don't think of anything else. They might be stuck inside a cage, but they're absorbed in each other, In the material world, sometimes people are like that too. But that is only a temporary thing in the material world. In the spiritual world, it's eternal. And it's ever expanding. It's not just like in the material world, you get fed up with it after a while, or the other person just punches you in the nose and runs away, get divorced, this, that, the other. So many things go on. In the spiritual world, it's not like that. So, what to do? Devotional service is the process to, if we want, the choice is ours. Everything's our choice, isn't it? If you want to get out of this material world, if we want to come to pure devotional service, it has to be anyabilasitashrunyam jnana karmarjinavitam. It has to be freed of all these other things, separatist desires. As long as we're separatists, seeing ourselves in the center, thinking we can do it our way, I can study my way and do it, or I can chant my way and do it. It doesn't work like that. You have to follow the process, Prabhupada said. You want to come to pure devotional service, Shuddhanam, pure devotional service, there's a process. And we have to follow the process. Prabhupada Bhakti said they all say the same thing. So it's our choice. Which prison you want to stay in, that's your choice. I think, well, of course we may say, oh, that's just blind faith. Well, even if it is blind faith, it can't be worse than this one. Anything else? Yes, Prabhu. Mickey?
Thank you for the amazing class, Maharaj. You mentioned that the soul gets covered, and I understand that the soul's original state is Satchidananda, where all our desires is to please Krishna. Would you be able to explain how this covering happens and our desires get transformed into our need for other things rather than Krishna?
How we will, our pure consciousness of the living entity, the pure characteristics of the living entity become covered over. Well, you probably have daily experiences of that. Probably. Isn't it? Daily experiences. You associate with something. Have you ever had that experience? What's in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives the example of the wind. How the wind associating with roses smells like roses, and when it goes over or goes through that room which I was telling you about earlier on, it smells like stool. So by association. You associate, Prabhupada says, how do you become a devotee? How do you transform, or how do you dovetail? Prabhupada used the word dovetail, but how do we transform our desires, our consciousness back to Krishna? He said, it's just like this, he said. You associate with drunkards and you drink. And you drink and you drink. And you become a drunkard. By association. We associate with the modes of nature. In this material world, we have a desire. The living entity's initial, you could say, consciousness in this material world is one of separatism from Krishna. So you have a desire to, obviously you have a desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. So that means there has to be some object for enjoying. So you come into this material world, you associate with something, and gradually, one by one, you become more and more implicated in this material world. Whether it's from Lord Brahma, who creates, may become a little bit of the mentality, I'm the doer, becomes a little implicated in what's done, association of various kinds, and gradually we become more and more absorbed and more entangled in the banyan tree of material existence. It's by association. Because it's our choice. We want to associate separately from Krishna. Where are you going to go? In the spiritual world, there's not many places to go. You can go to the Brahmajyoti. But if you want to actually try to enjoy separately from Krishna, you come into the material world. When we're in the spiritual world, there's nowhere to go. Krishna's everywhere. In the material world, we feel Krishna arranges, so you don't think of him. You've got to think of something. The soul is not a dead stone. Always some desire is coming. So objects are there. Material nature arranges all kinds of objects accordingly. Like you give to your kid so many toys, the child becomes enamored with a mobile phone or some games or some rubbish, and becomes very much affected by it. So similarly, living entity in this material world, like kids, and all these various toys in the material world in the form of rockets and planets and this thing and that thing, and we become attached to it. We identify with it. We've got to identify with something. So in the modes of nature, we become implicated in the modes of nature, one by one by one. When we come in, we don't have any particular attachment to any one thing, but we have a desire to try to enjoy. So Krishna provides in this. We have minuscule choices, you could say, within the material, which mode of nature or which kind of enjoyment we're inclined towards. But it gradually become implicated in karma. Initial desire to be separated from Krishna, to enjoy separately. And then we become implicated in karmas in this material world. Overcome. Like a cloud covering the sun is not covered, our consciousness is covered by the cloud. So the cloud of the material energy causes us to forget Krishna, look the other way, and there's the material energy. And we get attached to it. And by association you may be influenced to be more in this mode or more in that mode, if it's your choice. By transcendental association you may become attracted to the transcendental path. By association. Anything else? That's why the Vedic literatures are there. The Varnashram system is there for human beings, to try to give them a chance to elevate their consciousness and become free of this bondage, this entanglement. Well, it's 6:28, and if you want to go for Arti, it's time to go for Arti. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.